What's up? What's happening? Welcome here to Lacrosse Now. I am Travis Eldridge back with you again. We have a terrific show. I think you're really going to like it. Two huge name guests in the coaching world joining us here this week. The NLL had a bunch of games this past weekend. We're not going to touch on that. We'll get to more NLL stuff next week, but very heavy on the college lacrosse stuff on today's show. And the guests really speak for themselves. We'll be joined by current Duke head coach, Team USA head coach, getting ready for the 2023 World Championships out in California. John Danowski joins us. We'll talk about the Blue Devils looking ahead to their 2023 season this spring. Also, about that roster for the Team USA men's national team that was just released here in the last week or so. Talk about some of the difficult decisions Coach Danowski had to make here in that coaching staff. Never an easy situation when trying to pick the 23 best men's players in this country. Never easy. Always guys that probably could make that team that get left off. So we talk about that in Duke with Coach Danowski. And then we will be joined by the head coach of the Stony Brook women's program, Joe Spelina. Obviously, high expectations again for them. New conference. They're now in the CAA, so we are proud to partner with Stony Brook now to have a chance to broadcast some of those Stony Brook women's games this year. Top 4, top 5 in some of these preseason polls that are being released. We'll talk about those expectations with Joe Spelina, and also about now being a college lacrosse dad, as his son Joey Spelina is now wearing number 22 up there at Syracuse. So we'll hit on that at the end of that interview. So two terrific guests with Coach Danowski and Coach Spelina. But I want to kick things off with the big news in college lacrosse over the last week, and that is the news of another legendary head coach calling it a career. Head coach Bill Tierney out at Denver saying that 2023 will be his last season as the head coach of the Pioneers, his last year in the coaching profession, at least as a head coach, after spending a number of years at Princeton, obviously winning 6 national titles there, taking his talents out west to Denver, winning a national championship with the Pioneers. I mean, the accolades speak for themselves. He is one of the greatest to ever do it in the profession. 7 national titles in all. Is the only coach, the first coach to win a national championship at two different Division I programs. Obviously a Hall of Famer, one of the winningest coaches in Division I men's lacrosse history. But I want to talk about my experience with Coach Tierney here on the show, because he is always, the thing that's always stood out to me, despite the fact that he has accolades that list off forever, he's always been extremely kind with his time. Since the second I got here to the network, every interview that we've done with him, it's been slotted for 5 to 10 minutes to talk about Denver and what they have going on, expectations for the year, coming off a big win or getting ready for a big game in a matchup, a top 10 type showdown. And every time, I swear, the interview that was supposed to be 5 or 10 minutes ends up being 30 or 40. I mean, there are times we have to move some other stuff off to the side and push things back because he's taken up more time, and every one of those conversations has been incredibly enjoyable. And so I want to thank him for all the time he's given. Hopefully we have a chance to catch up with him a couple more times before this 2023 season comes to a close and before he calls it a career. But his ability to not only talk about what's going on with his program, but it's always been so interesting to talk about the broader landscape of lacrosse with him, because obviously he saw it from the side of the East Coast and the Blue Blood program and in taking over Princeton and creating the dynasty he did there. And then he decided to help the sport and move west and do something that not a lot of coaches have done in this sport, and that is try to win in a different part of this country. And he did it. In 2015, it all culminated in a national championship for Denver, the first one in that program's history. So I really am appreciative of all the time he's given us here at LSN, now Lacrosse TV, and for me, because I was thinking about what I was going to say for this, and I was thinking about how much time he would give us in every time we've sat down with him, including just a couple weeks ago, by the way. If you missed our last interview with Coach Tierney, it happened toward the end of December, so just go back on through YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, and you can take a listen to our conversation with Coach Tierney entering this 2023 season. But I remember back to my days at Syracuse, And when I was a student at Syracuse, we obviously covered the lacrosse program because the Syracuse lacrosse program is so great. And we broadcast the games at WAER, a local NPR affiliate that does Syracuse University sports up in Syracuse, New York. And when he first took the job at Denver, obviously it was a big story in the lacrosse world, and we wanted to get him on for an interview. Well, not only did he do one interview with us that year, he did multiple interviews with us. I was actually lucky enough to talk to him toward the end of the season in his first year there at Denver, actually leading into a game which ultimately won them a conference title against Loyola when they were playing at the Broncos Stadium at the end of that 2010 season. And it's just thinking back on that now, a guy who had won 6 national championships at that time, has all these different things probably buzzing around of him leading a brand new program that's trying to win a conference championship. And he had time to talk to a couple of student journalists from Syracuse, not once, but multiple times for lengthy conversations because we were trying to get as many answers as we could for different feature stories we were trying to produce for our radio broadcast leading in and out of the Syracuse men's lacrosse broadcast we were doing. And just thinking back on that now makes me just realize the type of special person he is. Not only for me now as a professional, having a chance to catch up with him and having him give as much time as he has to us now, but also the amount of time he gave me as just a student journalist at Syracuse when he probably could have picked about 15 other things that were more important to do, but he took the time to do radio interviews with us for those stories. So I've always been appreciative of the time that he has given us, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more time to chat before his coaching career at Denver is over. But good luck to Coach Tierney here in his final go-around, and very much always appreciate the time. So speaking of great coaches, one of the other winningest Division I coaches in the men's game, Coach John Danowski at Duke. Had a chance to catch up with him today, getting ready for the Blue Devils 2023 season. Take a listen.
This segment of Lacrosse Now is brought to you by Watch Dingo.
We've got Duke head coach John Danowski joining us as we look ahead to 2023. And Coach, it's a kind of strange offseason for you guys, knowing that you're not coming off an NCAA tournament run last year. I wonder what's that feeling like? What's it been like around this team in the fall, and now as you look ahead to 2023?
We had a terrific fall. It was we had a lot of fun. Guys, worked really hard. We did things a little bit differently. We worked up until the last absolute day that we could practice by NCAA rule. Really got back to the fundamentals and the basics of the game. But these guys they did an unbelievable job in the classroom. Somewhere the team GPA, we're still trying to figure it out, but it's a little under a 3.5. 49 guys out of 51 had a 3.0 or better. So, they're compliant, the task, at hand. And last year is in the rearview mirror. It's just, I guess somebody might use it as a story at some point, but I don't know that it's important to anybody here other than this is where we are today, and let's just be where our feet are.
I mean, that's how you have to look at it. And you guys have a lot coming back from that team, obviously plenty of talent. What was the message here in the fall and in the spring?
Let's have fun, let's have fun, and let's try to have this extraordinary experience together. Let's try to get to know our teammates really well. Let's try to put all the distractions aside, social media, other things that are so unimportant in your life. Let's really try to focus on your schoolwork, your family, the team, playing lacrosse, just being a kid.
One of those kids you have that's a special talent is Brendan O'Neill. And we were doing another segment. We were talking about him as a freshman. And I think it's been a lot of fun to watch him now kind of come into his own as a player and a leader as part of your offense over the last couple of years. How different is it to see Brendan now on that end of the field as it was opposed to when he was a freshman joining your team?
What Coach Matt Danowski does on the offensive end is not not simple. It might seem simple when it looks right, but there's a lot that goes on. And I think that Brennan has become what you would hope your attackman to be, and that's a coach on the field who really is in sync, with Matt, who understands what it is that we're trying to accomplish, how we're trying to play, where the looks are, what the defense is trying to accomplish. There's only so many things the defense can do, right? Right? You can slide from inside, you can slide adjacent, you can fake slide, you can play zone. But where's the first slide coming from? Where's the second slide coming from? And Brennan's IQ has just grown tremendously.
Talking to Lars Tiffany about this earlier here in the offseason about just dealing with the influx of talent. And you guys have been lucky enough, whether it's through recruiting classes or transfer portal or whatever. I mean, you got a whole host of talent. You got talent all over the field. How have you learned to coach that talent and the best way to try to plug people into the right places where you ultimately get the best out of that group? Like, what have you learned over the last several years about how you do that?
Again, I don't know if we've learned anything. I think that the rules are still the same. There's this tendency when you have 5th years that you really kind of don't want to like those guys because they're going to take away a spot, from somebody that you've been working with for 1, 2, or 3 years. But then you realize very quickly that these are great kids, and your returning players, they couldn't care less if somebody's a 5th year or a freshman. The best players play, and they want those guys to play. So again, we've never had a bad experience socially. Guys fit in really well. And even though there's some trepidation early, that never really comes to fruition. So it's, that's just a little bit of overthinking it. And it's the best players play. And then it's about chemistry. It's about experience. It's about trying to not necessarily do things, quote, our way, but do things, that are efficient and that put the team in best position to be successful. And again, it's not easy coming, when guys come from different programs because they've got habits that they've developed over 4 years. So it takes time to build that chemistry and to grow that, and to grow the personality of a team.
Does coaching Team USA and dealing with all the talent you have there, has that helped translate to dealing with all the talent you've had on campus?
The thing that still trumps everything else is chemistry. Yeah. Chemistry trumps talent, when the talent's equal. Now, sometimes teams are just more talented than you, and that's just how it goes. But, for us, we love the idea of building a team. We love the idea of guys playing for each other. Whether it's Duke on the chest or USA on the front chest, it is about playing for each other, and developing, understanding, being humble. Humility is really important part of what we try to teach. Unselfishness, team first. And in this day and age, that's not easy. It's not easy when, likes and dislikes and again, some of that stuff will determine if you can make some extra NIL money or greater popularity in the PLL. All that stuff, affects, a student's performance.
You guys have the opportunity to host Denver in February, and it may be the last time you have a chance to coach against head coach Bill Tierney with his announcement here in the offseason. What has it been like to go up against him throughout your 2 careers?
It's been awesome. We go back to the Hofstra Princeton days, and where we would play each other. And now Denver and Duke. And, Billy is such a fiery competitor. His teams are so fundamentally sound. He always has a great staff with him. He's smart enough to surround himself with some really great lacrosse people. Dave Metzbauer, and now Matt, at Denver. And so it's, always a challenge and always a pleasure. Anytime you get to coach against a Hall of Fame coach, it's got to get you fired up.
What's the best way to sum up coaching against him?
As an opposing coach, you got to keep your cool, because, coach will get after the officials a little bit. And if you don't get after the officials, you feel like you're letting your team down. And so then you end up maybe getting out of character a little bit. And you got to maintain your discipline. That's for sure.
We talked a bunch about the offensive end of the ball for you guys, but I think defensively may be your strength in terms of some of the guys you have back. Obviously, going to have to figure out the goal situation a little bit, but in terms of close defense, you got a lot of talent on that end. What kind of comfort does it give you when you have those kind of pieces back on that end of the field?
This whole story, everybody's back. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We've got some older guys, who have logged a lot of minutes, and so experience counts, right? And that's important. But we have some younger guys who are ready to compete, and ready to play, and the ability to maybe play more people. Maybe we'll be a little fresher. Maybe we can extend the field a little bit, the perimeter, and and make people work off the ball. Those are all things that that we need to consider here in the preseason.
I want to, before we let you go, ask about Team USA here for a second, because you guys obviously have your roster for next summer for the World Championships. What was it like going through the process here now the second time around?
It was much harder. Much harder. The first time around, I think we had it figured out a little bit earlier. The talent was so similar. I mean, we were splitting hairs at the end. The last two nights down in Orlando, when we were trying to pick the travel team, all 46 guys have made the team, or 48, I think. But, we have to pick a travel team. And, you can make an argument for every guy. You can make an argument for guys who weren't there.
Yeah.
So close. Again, we were looking for chemistry. We were looking for, who's going to make each other better. We like guys who have been cut before, so to speak, who didn't make the travel roster because they're hungry. You need some older guys because you need that experience. And so it was just this was much more difficult than the first time around. The way these guys handled themselves in every training session we had, every meeting, they were the consummate professionals. I mean, we were shaking, we had tears in our eyes. When we announced the team to everyone, we shook everybody's hands. We looked them in the eye. We had tears in our eyes. I mean, it was really a hard thing to do. My heart goes out to the guys who didn't get to travel this time. But I do believe that the next team will be even better than this one. There's some really, really incredible young talent. And I believe that the program is kind of set in place for success, for the next couple of runs.
Well, and I think that's got to be one of the hard parts, is that you got young guys who are coming up, but they may have another run. And so then you mentioned the experience. Like, you want guys who've been part of that, because the international game's different than the PLL. It's different than college. It's a different animal. And when you're trying to win a goal by one game against Canada in the gold medal, like, you probably want some guys who have been there before. How much does that weigh on the balance of some guys who are new and inexperienced at that level at the international game and guys that have maybe been a part of a roster or two?
And that's correct. And in 2018, we had guys who lost in 2014. We had guys who got cut in 2014 or didn't make. And so, you had hungry guys. You had guys who suffered the what it was like to get to the last weekend or the last game and lose. And so, that was easier. Now, it's going to be a little tougher. Now, you've won the gold medal, but I think the guys realize how difficult it is. They're going to add another game. You need maturity. You need a sense of discipline, and you need an incredibly high IQ in order to be successful. And that's just not from one or two guys, but that's from the entire 23 guys. They have to understand, and winning has to trump everything. The individual aspect of the game. One of our biggest kind of mantras was, Rob Pennell was, quote, all-world attackman, right? Whatever that means. He had 1 point in the last game.
Yeah.
After 80 minutes of lacrosse, he had 1 point. And that was the assist that wins the game. And I think Rob would tell you he was delighted with the way he played. He had second assists. He made great decisions with the ball. And, without a shot clock and without counts, some of those decisions that you make are just magnified.
2018 was a big deal. Being in Israel was a unique experience, but there's a lot being put on this 2023 World Championships with the Olympics possibly looming and it being in the United States. How have you looked at the importance of this, not only just for Team USA trying to win another gold medal, but also for the greater vision of the sport?
To be honest, I haven't thought about it at all. Between what we do here at Duke and the time that we spend with USA Lacrosse, just getting the roster was such a was so important. And you're right. The experience in Israel was once in a lifetime. The opportunity to visit Jerusalem, the opportunity to be in Israel. I never would have set foot, in the Middle East. Never mind, to be coaching lacrosse in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So, it was an incredible life experience. This is going to be a little bit more normal. It's going to be in the United States. It'll be a little bit more, mainstream, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see you guys compete out in San Diego this summer. But first, we get a chance to see you guys on the field with Duke this spring. Can't wait to see you guys back. Good luck as you get ready here in January, and we'll talk here sometime down the road. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate all the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time today. This was awesome.
So excited to be joined by Stony Brook head coach Joe Spelina. And Joe, we're excited because we got a new partnership. You guys are in the CAA. We're going to have a chance to see your team a couple of times throughout the season here on Lacrosse TV. So welcome to the new conference. Can't wait to see this team. What's it like for you to get ready for playing in the CAA?
Well, it's interesting, right? We're changing conferences, but we do have a lot of familiarity with the teams. I think when you look at the NCAA bracket the last couple of years, it always seems to match up the CAA and the America East champions early. So we've gotten, we also, I think, travel-wise, makes sense for us to play a lot of those CAA schools non-conference, but now, now obviously we're in the same conference. So we're excited. It's different teams that, are guaranteed to play every year within conference. And, we think this sets us up RPI wise to strengthen our conference schedule, which puts a little less stress, although we didn't take advantage of that in making sure that we have a powerful non-conference schedule. So we kept our non-conference schedule as is. And we think that the added RPI points from playing in such a great conference as the CAA is something that, we're excited to embark on this new adventure, with our squad.
Look, as you know, probably better than most, it's in college sports especially, it's not like a one-year thing for programs in a CAA or America East like yourself. Like, it's a building process. You prove to people that, hey, we belong in the national conversation, and then maybe the next year you're there to start. Well, you guys have proven it now year after year, and the expectations about as high as you can get in the top four here in some of these preseason polls. How have you learned to handle and deal with those expectations now that you guys are there in the national conversation every year?
Well, I was watching the Georgia game last night of that national championship game and listening, and I try to make it. I always want to listen to the post game of the coaches, and Kirby Smart's, sustained excellence, something that's built to last and to trust and develop his players to put them in a position to be perennial power, and that was kind of when I was listening to him speak, I all right, we're on that path. Like we've been on that path, and I think those are some of the things that you want to make sure, that you are built, that way, that you have, a program that can compete, every year, and I think when you look at what we've been able to build, it's something that emulates that. I think, last couple of years, obviously, we've had some heartbreakers at the end, but I think it's also a situation where we know we're getting closer. When the 1-8 game is the closest game every year in the quarterfinals, that obviously speaks for us overplaying our seed and really rising to the occasion. I don't know, if we're every year it seems like we're our players, regardless of who we're playing, that we're able to answer the bell and give, put our best foot forward.
You mentioned those players, and clearly you have had a ton of really special players, especially here over the last 5-6 years with this program. And Ellie Macera is getting a lot of recognition, deservedly so now in the preseason after the year she had last year. Compared to like all the other talent you've had, what makes her stand out, what she's done here so far in her career, and what you expect this season?
I think when you look at the greats that have put our jersey on and just the day in and day out, she's obviously, listen, all those kids are fierce competitors. I think her ability to attack different ways is, I could put her behind the cage and she could be one of the best attackmen in the country. I could put her on as a wing dodger and she could be one of the best, A-mids in the country, dodging off those wings and the elbows, or I could put her up top center. I think her ability to attack in different ways from different spots makes her different, and I think that just, makes her so much more dangerous. And I think she's probably has a high level mix of, hey, I could be a passer today, or I could be a dodger today, based on how the defensive game plan is laid out. And, I think she's one of those where, her competitive nature has been the thing that has been so impressive. Obviously, her skill set, she's a freak, draw a circle. I mean, she legitimately checks all the boxes. And, I saw like the player countdowns and all those things. There's not a more complete player or a player that impacts any lineup. And it's not a knock on any play. It's just like how, if you take any other player in the country and if they were asked to do what we asked her to do, I'm not sure there's many, if any, that could, be able to do that. And I think the coolest thing, and I have a younger daughter now who's getting ready to go through it. I have two, but one that's getting ready to go through. And I think the thing with Ellie, which has been super impressive to me, is she ended the year, had a great game against Carolina at the end, and finished the first or second team All-American, depending on what we're looking at, right? There's a bunch of different releases. And she came back way better. And that is very, very, very odd and that includes Kylie, or a lot of those kids were at their peak and they just dominant at their peak. And I thought Ellie was pretty close last year when we left. And when she came back, she was even better and just more dominant. And I think what happened with her is her personality is, she really, I think she realized how damn good she was, and I think she's like, listen, no one can guard me. Nobody. And she's fierce, in practice, she's fierce. In the lift, she's fierce. And there's just an elite mentality that goes along with it. Like all the great ones just have a different way about them.
Yeah, and I think it's so much fun to watch, probably for you as a coach, when it happens to your player, when it clicks, when it's like, all right, now I'm not just competing here, but I can take this to the next level, and like everything I feel like slows down for people. And it happens in all ways of life, but sports, I think it can click and really shine through.
Well, I think we say this all the time. Like when your best players are your hardest workers, it's really hard to fail. It really is. And I think that's like, I want to say it's our secret potion, but it's like just kind of our best players have always been our hardest workers. And if you go through our top kids this year, like their work ethic is unparalleled and very, I say this, I have to say less in practice than I ever have the last few years because it's a player driven program. Our players care so much. It's so important to them that if somebody's not pulling their weight, it's internally handled. So there's that pressure, which allows us as coaches to coach. And when we say less, but when we speak, it means more. And I think when that's like, it's something that just makes us a little bit different.
So look, the next level for your program is to get over that quarterfinal hump. It's been how many times you've gotten there, and you run into a top seed, and you've been close. You just haven't gotten to that championship weekend. I wonder, because you've now done this a couple of times, when you have a disappointment like that at the end of the year, you're so close to where you want to be, and you don't quite get there. You then come back the next year, and it's like, especially when you got a bunch of players coming back, it's hard because they know at the end of the year what they want to do, but you got to go through all the steps again to get back there, prove that you're worth being there, and then try to get over the hump. How do you approach that? Because it's a lot to come back and go all right, well, we want what we want at the end of the year, but we got to do this all over again.
Well, I could go on for a day with that, because it's hard. Like when it immediately happens, you got to separate yourself. It in a lot of ways, and I'm not trying to minimize death, but it in a lot of ways, it feels that way. When you end of your season, it's hard. And I think as college coaches, you have such a bond with your players. And, for us, we believe in our kids. We don't bring a million transfers in. We develop them. And, for us, we get a lot of kids that are a little bit under the radar. Not as much as publicized. They're freaking good when we get them. So, there's a great appreciation from me to them, and then them in return. So there's a love there. There's a trust there that is different, and I think that part is hard, but it's not about lacrosse in our program as much as it is about the connections and the passion for and the care and of the locker room and everything that goes into it, like the true pride of the program our players wear. So I think there's an excitement to be around each other. This fall they were really good. And it was that, we went and played the best teams that would line up with us, and our players were awesome, and I think we didn't graduate a lot. We graduated some glue kids, and the players we lost, we're going to miss. And you look at that, and it's scary. I mean, we legitimately bring back a large majority of our defense, a large majority of our top scorers. And even looking forward, as we do, we're only going to graduate probably one starter for next year. So as loaded up as we are, I mean, it's built to last. And I think that when you put your effort into your players, and the players put that effort back, and there's a true appreciation and trust, it just builds. And listen, it stinks. Don't get me wrong. I've been heartbroken. I mean, it's over and over, and it's hard. It really is. And it's hard. How do you get up and you keep being the bridesmaid? And I'm tired of it. They're tired of it. We get it. But we also know that, as bad as the seeds have been, and our disagreeing with that, my first thing has always been, and I could go on to why we deserve the better seed. I don't have to, because it doesn't take a brain scientist to figure out why we kind of was shortchanged. But we also could have helped ourselves. We lost a game to Northwestern. We lost a close game to Cuse. We did some things that we can control. So in a program like us, quote unquote, a mid-major, we have to leave no doubt. And that means we have to take the pen out of people's hands and make it so that there's not a story to be written. It's, hey, Stony Brook their body of work speaks for itself. We don't need to try to argue it or take away from it, and just do what we're set out to do.
One of the first times I heard the name Kaylin Hart is when she threw that ridiculous goal against Syracuse up at the Carrier Dome a couple of years ago when she's a freshman. I'm like, man, this girl can play. And we continue to see her scoring ability now over the last couple of years. What have you seen from her? Because obviously you've had some great scores. What stands out about her ability around the crease?
Well, her athleticism is really underrated. I mean, she can shoot the heck out of it with her left hand. She's obviously a dynamic dodger. I think she became a complete player halfway through the year. I think she put a lot on herself to be a goal scorer. And I spend a lot of time with her understanding I just need you to be a points producer. I need you to have some games you're going to have more hockey assists. Some games you're going to have some more primary assists. but some games you're going to score a lot, and you can't worry about goals and assists and all those things because our offense isn't built like that. It's an offense where some games you're at the end of the rainbow and you're going to be the goal scorer, and sometimes you're 2 away, and sometimes you're 1 away. But when we're going, a lot of that is built on her, and I think people are paying more attention to her, and as they should, because she's freaky good and she can hammer it. And there's a lot of times she looks a lot like number 17 looked on that left side. And I think that she's super fast, athletic, and she's at games now where she's like, all right, they're going to slide early to me. I'm just going to pass and step off and draw a slide, step off and pass, step off and pass. And watching that part of her game grow throughout the year made me really super proud of her, because that was somebody truly understanding the game and doing what the situation asked for, and not pressing early in games. When she was younger, she'd press for goals. And if the goal came early, she was gold. And if the goal didn't come right away, then, we chased ourselves a little bit. So she's such, diverse. She could be a 2-6 player or a 6-2 player. And I think that's what the great ones have to do.
Yeah, makes them dangerous. Being an assistant coach for Team USA this past summer, what'd you learn through that experience?
It was great. We had a blast. We still have that group chat with Jenny, myself, and Amy, Alex, and of course Colleen, and Ryan Dennehy, who is our behind the scenes guy, who's the head coach now at Mercer on the men's side. We had a blast. We had true appreciation for each other. I think it's funny because Jenny and I are super close. I coached her son Ryan, in club, and we are very different, obviously, but we actually complemented each other's styles really well. So that was really fun, where we'd laugh at each other, and then she'd be a little bit more of the kumbaya, and I'd be the one kicking over garbage cans, and then at times she'd be fired up and I'd be telling her to relax a little bit, and and I think the chemistry with the staff was awesome. But I think obviously to coach all those great players up close and personal, with obviously that world-class attack and all those great midfielders. And it was cool to just see their approach to the game from, having never really, coached against a lot of them, but not having really been, I don't want to say stuck in a dorm room at Towson for 2 weeks, but stuck in a dorm room at Towson for 2 weeks. But that was awesome. They were true pros and everything that's right about women's athletics, true role models, and every one of them. It was cool. Like even just seeing the fanfare with Charlotte, and it reminded me a lot of when we had traded for Paul with the Lizards, and I think I was able to kind of help her at times and protect her with some of the crap that was going on with whether it be with her stick guard, people trying to question her stick stringing and all those things, and but she is awesome. And the best part that nobody knows, and I wish that there was a way for people to find out more. She's funny as heck. Like her personality is off the charts. She doesn't take herself too seriously. And I think that's why when the bright lights go on, that kid goes to a different level. Yeah,
it was so much fun to watch that team and Charlotte and that whole crew. It was a lot of fun, and you got a gold medal out of it. So that's the ultimate goal, and you guys achieved it. Go ahead.
I think that it's interesting because I think the stage it was on could spark some major rule changes in collegiate women's lacrosse, and ways of adapting what's on the field and making it maybe, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, a little bit more viewer friendly and streamlined with pro and international, and making it a little bit easier to understand. So I think there's some exciting thing coming down the pike on the women's side that will really, I think, are going to really open up the game a lot.
Do you think just with like the flow of the game and less stoppages?
Less stoppages. I also think that there's things being spoken about as far as possibly less players on the field. Just things that I think the biggest thing. And listen, there's nobody that I coach this sport on every level, right? Like men, boys, girls. Like my second grader, my daughter who's a 2025, I coach her club team. Obviously my college women, Team USA. On the boys side, obviously years and years of club, obviously coaching all those guys. And then obviously having coached a couple high-end players, like I've seen it all. I think that one of the biggest, most frustrating things for me, not just me, a lot of people, is every level's got different rules.
Yeah.
And I think we have to make this, if we want to make this more viewer friendly, you have to be able to flip a game on and understand what is going on. And not like, oh, well, why are there 11 players on the field? Why is there, 12 players on the field? Why? And then on this game, there's 10 players on the field, 3-3-3 and one goalie, where the other side. So I think those are things that we have got to do a better job of making the game more understandable. At the younger ages, why is there no checking with young girls, first, second, third graders, but there's checking with boys, first, second, and third graders? Teach them how to check and learn how to check young the right way when they're most, when you're able to, as opposed to having a mandatory one pass rule because nobody could play defense. Kids, so a lot of that stuff is things that we could do to grow the game, really grow the game, not just say grow the game. And what does that mean when people say that, right? Like we have to fix some things and just kind of put everything the same so we're able to understand. Obviously, as you get older, kids are bigger, faster, stronger. That's going to be changing itself.
For sure. Let me finish with this, and I'm going to ask you to take the coach's hat off and put the dad hat on because you got a kid in college. Joey's up there at Syracuse. What's it going to be like to be a college lacrosse dad now over the course of the weekends throughout the spring?
Well, it's going to be crazy, and I'm very fortunately going to be able to make a lot of his games. I'm going to beat the heck out of myself with travel, but as you know, and I'll do anything for my kids. So I'm excited. I've watched him. People always ask me, "Oh, are you nervous with the pressure?" And the answer is no, because if you knew what he did when nobody was watching, you would not fear what he's going to do when people are. He's at 5 a.m. at the gym, the work, he doesn't stop. And his focus is unparalleled, and it's exciting. I'm excited to see him walk the walk. I think he's excited to do that. I think he's excited to help bring Cuse back with that awesome young class they have and the great returning players and obviously a great coaching staff. I'm excited to just go there and be a dad. When I went and watched them play in the fall, I sit goal line extended of wherever side they're attacking. And, I have to sit by myself. My wife makes me sit by myself because, I'm mumbling to myself and talking to myself and twisting and turning because I'm not used to not being on the sidelines. So that's exciting, but it's cool. I think as a dad to watch your kids chase dreams down and watch my boys, that are seniors now going to be able to do it again next year and chase that Division I dream down. But I'll be lying if, when I see him walk through that tunnel and their first game with that 22 jersey over his head, knowing that, I think that's something that I'll probably be a little emotional. My wife calls me the Tin Man, but I'd probably be a little emotional that day. But it's exciting. And, I think we all want what's best for our kids, and to see him chase that dream down is pretty special.
Yeah, it's freaking cool, Joe. Enjoy that whole moment because you only get a limited amount of time of seeing him do it at the college level, and it's gonna be really cool. A lot of expectations for him and them, and a lot of expectations for you guys too. It's gonna be a good spring. Looking forward to seeing you guys a couple of times throughout the year, and we can't wait. Good luck.
All right, man. I appreciate the time. You guys are doing a great job, and we know we're getting close to the season when we get to have these great combos. Yeah, for sure. We can't wait to see you guys back on the field. I would pay a lot of money to watch Joe Spelina just in the stands at Syracuse games, and I can picture it now, him kind of away from everybody else in the stands, kind of mumbling to himself watching Joey Spelina play. Joe Spelina a lot more comfortable on the sidelines than he is in the stands, but good luck to him, his son, obviously, at Syracuse, and good luck to him and Stony Brook, the women's team, as they get ready for 2023. Excited. Coming up here in the next week or so, we'll unveil our Game of the Week schedule for the CAA for this season. We got a couple of Stony Brook women's games on there, just a hint. So looking forward to seeing them here on Lacrosse TV throughout this 2023 season. Something else we have on Lacrosse TV coming up this weekend, our PBLA Game of the Week. We got the Jim Thorpe All-Americans against the Trenton Terror Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Once again, you can see it on Lacrosse TV. If you missed any of the highlights
from this past weekend's game. A fantastic goal from Bradley Voigt. Tommy Palisak making the highlights in our game of the week from this past weekend. So check out the Instagram feeds and the Twitter feeds for Lacrosse TV if you missed any of those highlights, and then watch again. PBLA Game of the Week, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. But as for now, it's all the time we have for you this week. We got more preview interviews coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Virginia's Lars Tiffany joining us to preview the Cavs 2023 season. We've got Megan Tyrell from Syracuse that'll be joining us. So make sure you stay locked into the podcast and the YouTube for interviews coming up in the next couple of weeks. But for now, we'll see you later.